Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. Colin Kaepernick is an awfully brave man, maybe the bravest since Audie Murphy. Our bettors are telling us that. That's why he's being celebrated by those in power and paid millions of dollars by a massive corporation. We'll discuss his new Nike deal just ahead. It's all part of the revolution in progress. Plus, we'll tell you a lot more about NBC News chairman Andy Lack and the maneuverings of that channel to protect sexual predator Harvey Weinstein. We have brand new reporting on that, which is fascinating and unnerving. But first, as you know, Capitol Hill was in chaos today thanks to the first day of hearings for Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh. Just a few days ago, you may remember, that was history, but see if you can recall talking heads telling you that John McCain's funeral, if it meant anything, meant that unity and civility had to return to Washington.
All of these people who are warring on normal days coming together, it was really dramatic.
But this notion of unity is really what I've been seeing.
Speakers at the service also spoke of bipartisanship and putting country over party.
Country over party. Well, that didn't happen today. Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley of Iowa couldn't even get the hearing started without being interrupted repeatedly by his Democratic colleagues. Here's a selection.
I welcome everyone to this confirmation hearing on the nomination of
Mr. Chairman.
Brett Kavanaugh.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to be recognized to ask a question before we proceed.
Mr. Chairman,
Judge
we
Kavanaugh's
received
many law
42,000 documents that we haven't
and
been
everyone
able
else
to
joining us
review
today.
last night, and we believe this hearing should
I know
be
this is
postponed.
an exciting.
We have been denied real access to the documents we need to advise.
Mr. Chairman, regular order is called for.
Which turns this hearing into a charade and a mockery of our norms.
Well,
and Mr. Chairman, I therefore move to adjourn this hearing.
It's the war hero from Connecticut. By the way, we didn't edit that tape. That was literally the very beginning, and Senator Harris of California immediately interrupted him. Meanwhile, the multiple screaming lefty protesters didn't get the memo about bipartisanship either. Here's what they did.
Please vote no! Please vote no!
The Kavanaugh must not be put on the court.
This hearing is an attack on women's rights and an attack on democracy. Shut this hearing down now! I urge you to shut this hearing down!
So it wasn't a good day for bipartisanship. Britt Hume has seen a lot of confirmation hearings, so he's got some perspective to draw from. That's why he's our senior political analyst here at Fox, and he joins us tonight on the set. Britt, was this, substantively different from other confirmation hearings, would you say?
Well, it was much more of a circus than they have been in the past, although some of these confirmation hearings have gotten pretty brutal and pretty political.
Yes.
But I think what you saw today in this whole uproar was a reflective of a couple of things. Part of it is pure partisanship. Part of it is resistance to Trump and the desire of some Democrats on the committee to show that they're part of that resistance. But beyond that, there's something deeper and more sincerely felt, and that is a genuine fear that the addition of Judge Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court to succeed Anthony Kennedy means that the court will tip to a judicial philosophy more to the right. The left has been much more dependent over the decades on the courts to achieve policy goals it could not achieve through legislation. It couldn't pass through legislatures, couldn't get signed by presidents, and so on. And that's how we came to have a universal right to an abortion. That was something that was created by the courts.
So voters didn't do that?
No, voters did not do that, and I don't think at the time it was done, voters would have done so. The same is true for the recognition of gay marriage now as a right. That emanated, if it did at all, from Justice Kennedy's view that there was a kind of a dignity vibe that he discovered in the Constitution, after I'd been lurking there for hundreds of years unnoticed, that gave rise to a right to gay marriage. Now, I'm not saying these policy results are good or bad. What I'm saying is they were achieved through the courts and not through legislatures, not through the normal political processes. Democrats have been much more dependent on the courts than Republicans have. Republicans have resisted these things, being conservatives and so on. And the tipping of the balance of the court to the right, I think, threatens what Democrats feel has been one of their key agencies, really, for their agenda. And that's why you have this resistance. It's partly politics.
I understand that, and they're mad about Merrick Garland, and honestly, I think they have right to be mad about Merrick Garland. Actually, I'm probably the only person who thinks that, but I do think that. What I'm so struck by, though, is that they're not making substantive arguments about his ideas or his fitness for the court. I mean, that would be fair game, I think.
Well, when you do hear the substantive arguments, they tend to go like this. There'll be a list presented of the parties that have prevailed in cases on which he has ruled. And from that is it extrapolated that he either favors this kind of a party or that kind of a party, this kind of plaintiff or this kind of defendant.
I understand.
Now, these arguments that are made about conservative jurists based on that kind of reasoning leave aside entirely what the law may have commanded in those cases. In other words, okay, so the corporations won in cases, 1 through 10,
yes.
Therefore you're pro-corporation. Well, what about what the law said? Maybe the corporations won because that's what the law requires.
Exactly.
And that kind of analysis is frequently missing, as it was indeed today, among the few arguments made by members of the
very
Senate
smart point, and I noticed
who
that.
were talking about at least the substance of his record to some extent.
So this does seem like kind of pure power politics. He'll get through if enough partisans can be rallied to their own side to get him through.
Now, this is going to be a party line vote. I don't think there's much question about that.
But
the question
will he get through? Republicans keep every senator?
Well, so far, no, it doesn't appear that the Democrats have been successful in peeling off any Republican votes. But make no mistake about it, Tucker. I covered the Bork hearings in 1987, and
yes.
we were well into the hearings when I was standing in a hallway talking to then chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Joe Biden, and he told me that Bork was going to be confirmed. And within a matter of days, the tide turned, and it turned during the hearings because the nominee did not make very smart political answers to questions he was asked about his views on privacy. I won't go into all the details of it, but the point was he answered legally questions that he needed to answer and more politically, and if he had, he would not successfully have been tarred with the idea that he was anti-privacy, which was what it turned on.
The predicate for Roe v. Wade. Yeah, I think every nominee since has learned not to make the mistake of saying what you think is true.
One reason why I think Democrats have to be worried this time that they can't turn this around is that Republicans and conservatives have learned a lot since 1987 about how to present these nominees, what sort of nominees to name, how to prepare them, and how to prepare the ground. Well, there's been this big ad campaign backing Kavanaugh to national television ads I've seen. That's all relatively new. We haven't seen that before. So his chances look very good. But believe me, Tucker, anything can happen.
That's why we're covering it. Britt Hume, thank you for that.